Instructions. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. Write all of your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the real test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1 of your booklet. Section 1. You and a friend are looking for a place to live. You have a list of places and go to see a rental agent to check on a number of points. Listen to the conversation between your friend and the rental agent and complete the list. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6 on the housing list. You will see there is an example which has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Hi, we've been looking over your listing of apartments for rent, and we have a few questions about a couple of the apartments. Can you help us?
Sure. Yep, this is our most recent listing. What would you like to know?
Well, we were first wondering about the house on 3rd Street. We can see that it is furnished and rents for $135 a week, but can you tell us how many bedrooms it has?
Let's see. In addition to the den, it has 3 bedrooms.
The rental on 3rd Street has 3 bedrooms. So in the example, 3 bedrooms has been written down in the number of rooms column for 19 3rd Street. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Hi, we've been looking over your listing of apartments for rent, and we have a few questions about a couple of the apartments. Can you help us?
Sure. Yep, this is our most recent listing. What would you like to know?
Well, we were first wondering about the house on 3rd Street. We can see that it is furnished and rents for $135 a week, but can you tell us how many bedrooms it has?
Let's see. In addition to the den, it has 3 bedrooms.
What about the one on Route 9N? It looks like it's big with a library and a deck, but it doesn't say how much it costs or anything else about it.
Oh yes, Mrs. Gaylor's apartment. That one is actually only a 10-month rental, and it is going for $156 per week. It's quite a nice place. She only rents for 10 months each year because of horse racing season. Then her relatives all come to stay, so tenants have to move out. It's a little bit inconvenient, but past tenants have really enjoyed their stay there.
Oh, well, we need it for a full year. I guess that one is out. How about the rental on Browen Drive? How many rooms does that one have?
As it says on the list, it has 2 bedrooms and a private kitchen and bath. But it's actually a very small place. That's why it's a bit cheaper.
Oh. Well then, what about the one that has 3 large rooms? Who is renting that property?
That one is a good deal. Mr. John Smith is renting it. But he's quite eccentric and he has a strict rule about no pets.
How about cats?
Nope, absolutely no pets.
Well then, how about this studio apartment rented by Mr. Bo Jensen? How is that one?
That ad is actually a bit deceptive. The studio apartment is the whole upper floor of an older house. It's actually very large and, at $45 a week, quite affordable. And it's near campus.
I think I'd like to check that one out. Do you have a telephone number that we can call?
It's not on the list? Oh, it isn't. Here it is. You should ring area code and then 543-7790.
Thanks. I think I'll call on that one first.
Your friend decides that he would like to talk to Mr. Bo Jensen. Look at questions 7 to 9. Answer questions 7 to 9. Write no more than 3 words for each answer.
Hello? 1512, Route 9.
Yes, is this Mr. Jensen?
Yes, it is. Can I help you?
Yeah, we're studying here at university and we came across the rental information for the studio apartment that you are renting. Is it still available?
Yes, of course. I actually just placed the ad and you're the first person to call. Is there anything you'd like to know about it?
Yes, actually there is. As students, we are on the internet a lot, and we heard that some homes in the area have high-speed connections. What type of connection do you have there now?
Oh, that's an interesting first question. But I guess I have heard that too. But we just have a phone line here. Nothing fancy. I think you can have a cable line installed, but it's just a phone line for now.
Okay, well maybe we can do that. What type of heating does the apartment have?
Now there's a more traditional question. We have oil heat here. It's an older house.
That tends to be a little more expensive during the winter, right?
Yeah, but there's nothing to do about it. It would cost too much for me to put in a gas heater. What else would you like to know about the apartment?
Well, we heard it was quite big. Is it furnished?
Actually, yes. I should have put that in the ad. It has an old couch and a couple chairs, a dining table, refrigerator, stove, and even a dishwasher.
Does it have any beds?
Yep, it has 2.
That sounds great. When is the apartment available?
You can have it tomorrow night if you want. I just have to clean up a couple things before you get here. Do you want to come over and see it first?
No, it sounds fine to us. I actually know the street too, so I know the area. We'll take it.
This is the end of Section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
To Section 2. Section 2. You will hear the general manager of a golf club talking to some people who would like to become members. First, you will have time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16. Now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to this meeting. Demand for membership places has far exceeded our expectations this year, so it was decided to gather you all here together to go through the process step by step, once rather than many times with each of you individually. The first thing you need to do is not fill in the application form. This, you see, is a waste of time, unless you have found an application sponsor. Your sponsor must be an existing full member of the club. Now, once you have your sponsor, you should log on to our website and fill in and send through the membership form. You will be prompted to provide the relevant deposit at the same time as you submit your application. You may do so using any major debit or credit card. The next step is for you to attend a general meeting of the club. There are typically meetings held once a month. After the club meeting, you will then be required to wait a while in order for the club committee to examine and, If all is in order, approve your application. It may be necessary to ask you to come forward for an additional interview before approval is granted, depending on the circumstances. Now, once you have been approved, you are almost a member of the club. All you need to do then is pay the remaining balance of your membership fee. Having done this, you are officially a member of Blainrow Golf Club. However, you cannot start to play in competitions until you have acquired your handicap. In order to do this, you must send in 3 cards. The committee will then issue you with a club handicap within 7 days on the basis of how you performed in each of the 3 rounds you played. Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20. No, I won't spend much more than a few minutes on this, but let's go through the different membership types quickly now. Remember, all the information I'm about to give you and more is available on our website. The first category is Full Ordinary Member. Basically, this is a full membership that gives you full playing rights during competitions, and for casual golf as well. It costs £10,000 to become a full member, or alternatively, 4 instalments of £2,500. Our next category is Associate. This is for a golfer who is already a member of a club but wants to join ours too, while keeping his existing club as his main club. You have the same rights as a full member, but the cost is £9,000. I must remind you that there is a limited number of memberships of this kind available. 5-day members pay £5,000 to join, and this payment can be put towards becoming a full member at a later date if you would like to upgrade your membership status. You enjoy full playing rights during casual play and can play in all weekday competitions. However, you cannot enter competitions at the weekend. Intermediate membership is open to golfers under the age of 25 and costs £1,800, as do the other remaining membership types: junior, senior, and overseas. If you are an intermediate member, you too have full playing rights for casual play. However, you can only play in competition if a full member of the club invites you to join him. Junior members are aged between 12 and 18. They enjoy restricted playing rights in casual playing time and are only allowed to play on Monday and Wednesday mornings. They can occasionally play in competitions, but the opportunities to play in this format are severely restricted. Senior members enjoy full rights at all times, and overseas members can play on the course casually at any time, and can enter competitions if invited to do so by a full member of the club. Now, as to the questions of... That's the end of section 2. You have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 3. Section 3. In this section, you will hear an interview conducted by an interviewer special with the scientist Peter Piot, who discovered Ebola, a dangerous disease. Both of them are conversing about the disease and its origin. First, look at questions 22 to 26. Listen to the conversation and answer questions 22 to 26.
Professor Piot, as a young scientist in Antwerp, you were part of the team that discovered the Ebola virus in 1976. Can you tell how did it happen?
I still remember. Someday in September, a pilot from Sabina Airlines brought us a shiny blue thermos and a letter from a doctor in Kinshasa, in what was then Zara in the thermos. He wrote there was a blood sample from a Belgian nun who had recently fallen ill from a mysterious sickness in Yambuku, a remote village in the northern part of the country. He asked us to test the sample for yellow fever.
These days, Ebola may only be researched in high-security laboratories. How did you protect yourself back then?
We had no idea how dangerous the virus that we were dealing with was. And there were no high-security labs in Belgium back then. We just wore our white lab coats and protective gloves. When we opened the thermos, the ice inside had largely melted and one of the valves had broken. Blood and glass shards were floating in ice water. We fished the other, intact test tube out of the slop and began examining the blood for pathogens using the methods that were standard at the time.
But the yellow fever virus apparently had nothing to do with the nun's illness.
No, and the test for Lassa fever and typhoid fever were also negative. What then could be? Our hopes were dependent on being able to isolate the virus from the sample. To do so, we injected it into mice and other lab animals. At first, nothing happened for several days. We thought that perhaps the pathogen had been damaged from insufficient refrigeration in the thermos. But then, one animal after the next began to die. We began to realize that the sample contained something quite deadly.
But you continued.
Other samples from the nun who had just died arrived from Kinshasa when we were just about able to begin examining the virus under the electron microscope. The World Health Organization entrusted us to send all of our samples to a high-security lab in England. But my boss at the time wanted to bring our work to a conclusion no matter what. He grabbed a vial containing virus material to examine it, but his hand was shaking and he dropped it on a colleague's foot. The vial shattered. My only thought was, oh shit! We immediately disinfected everything, and luckily our colleague was wearing thick leather shoes. Nothing happened to any of us.
Now look at questions 27 to 30. As the talk continues, answer questions 27 to 30.
In the end, you were finally able to create an image of the virus using the electron microscope.
Yes, and our first thought was, what the hell is that? The virus that we'd spent so much time searching for was a very big, long, and worm-like. It had no similarities with yellow fever. Rather, it looked like the extremely dangerous Marburg virus, which, like Ebola, causes a hemorrhagic fever. In the 1960s, the virus killed several laboratory workers in Marburg, Germany.
Were you afraid at that point?
I knew almost nothing about the Marburg virus at the time. When I tell my students about it today, they think I must be from the Stone Age. But I actually had to go to the library and look it up in the Atlas of Virology. It was the American Center for Disease Control which determined a short time later that it wasn't the Marburg virus, but a related unknown virus. Hundreds of people had already succumbed to the virus in Yambuku and the area around it.
You were also the one who gave the virus its name. Why Ebola?
On that day, our team sat together till late into the night. We had a couple of drinks discussing the question. We definitely didn't want to name the new pathogen Yambuku virus because that would have stigmatized the place forever. There was a map hanging on the wall, and our American team leader suggested looking at the nearest river and giving the virus its name. It was the Ebola River. So by around 3 or 4 in the morning, we had found a name. But the map was small and inaccurate. We only learned later that the nearest river was actually a different one. But Ebola is a nice name, isn't it?
That is the end of section 3. You will now have some time to check your answers.
Section 4. You will hear a lecture about wind energy. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 33 on page 8. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 33.
With the rising cost of fossil fuels, there's a great deal of interest these days in developing alternative sources of energy. Today, I'd like to talk about one of these, wind power. In the past couple of decades, there's been an upsurge of interest in using the wind as a source of energy, but the idea isn't new at all. People have been harnessing the power of the wind for centuries, ever since ancient peoples first used sailboats. In ancient China, farmers used a rudimentary sort of windmill to pump water. Wind power was used in other parts of the ancient world as well. In Persia, for example, farmers used wind-powered mills to grind their grain. During the Middle Ages, in the Netherlands, people went back to the ancient idea of using the power of the wind to move water. They used windmills to drain lakes, thereby creating more land for farming.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 34 to 40 on page 9. Now listen carefully and answer questions 34 to 40.
At present, people around the world are using the wind to generate electricity, some old methods, some new. Is this the solution to our modern energy problems? Well, as with anything, there are both advantages and disadvantages to using wind power. Let's take a look at some of the reasons to use wind power. One of the biggest problems with using fuels, such as oil and coal, is pollution. Wind power, on the other hand, is clean. It causes no pollution and therefore doesn't contribute to global warming. Another great advantage of wind power is that it's a renewable resource. Oil and coal reserves are limited, but will never run out of wind. Economics is another reason to use wind power. using the wind to generate electricity costs less, much less, than running other types of generators. In addition, since wind turbines don't take up much land, the land around them can be used for other purposes, such as farming. There are disadvantages, however. Even though generating electricity with wind is relatively inexpensive, the technology isn't cheap. The initial costs of setting up wind turbines can be quite high. Another issue is reliability. Wind doesn't blow at a constant strength. Therefore, at times, a lot of electricity can be produced, while at others there may be little or none. Wind turbines usually have to be located in rural areas where the land is open. Their distance from cities, where the most electricity is needed, is another issue. Although wind is considered to be a clean source of energy, wind turbines cause their own sort of pollution. Wind turbines are usually placed in high, open areas where they're easy to be seen. Rural residents often feel that the beautiful local scenery is spoiled by the sight of the wind turbines. In addition, wind turbines aren't quiet. In fact, one wind turbine can produce as much noise as a car travelling at highway speeds.
That is the end of Section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Section 4. You will hear a lecture about customer psychology.